Okay, so we are continuing this series called Overcome. We're like halfway through it, and we're going to talk about a good one today. I want to lead off with a story about when I was in high school. I took this ski trip shortly after I had moved to Texas. Like I was still considered the new kid. It had only been a couple months since I moved, maybe 3, maybe 4. But I was taking this ski trip, and you guys know what this mountain is? Anybody? Just by looking at it? No, not Red River. Psh, no way. Red River gets swallowed by that. It is Winter Park. Probably my favorite mountain in all of Colorado. It's huge. Like this place, it's got so many places to ski. Up there in the Bowl, over there on Mary Jane, over there in Winter Park Mountain, everywhere. That's one of my favorite places to ski. But I took this ski trip when I was in high school, and Houston to Winter Park in a charter bus is 24 hours straight. Okay? So it is not a short, like, hey, let's just go for the week. It's like a big deal. And I didn't really know anybody except for maybe 1 or 2 people on this entire trip. I just thought, I love skiing. I'm still new. I need to meet people. What a great way to combine it. And I went with an organization, not the church. It was an organization that, it'll remain nameless because I don't want to film it and defame them. But the hard part about this was I get on the bus. It's like the morning that we're leaving. I get on the bus, and you guys know that feeling when you walk into a room and you don't know anybody. Or you walk into a place even like this and you feel like you don't know anybody. What's the first thing you do? You look for anything comfortable, anything familiar, right? So I'm scanning every row just as fast as I can. I got my little backpack, and I'm like, there's somebody I recognize. I don't know them that well, but I recognize. So I go sit down. I was like, hey, can I sit here? He's like, yeah, sure, that's fine, whatever. Well, it turns out that little buddy that he had already sitting there was in the bathroom. And he came out, and he's like, hey, you're in my seat. I was like, are you kidding? You're doing this, really? He's like, yeah, you need to get up. I look over at my friend, and he's like, it's true, he was there. So I get my backpack, walk up to the front of the bus, and I sat in the front of the bus by myself for 24 hours. My friend forgot me. But that's not the end of the story. We get to Winter Park. They put us in condos with people, about 4 to 5 to 6 per condo. I get placed with 5 guys that I don't know at all. They've been buddies since kindergarten, right? They play football together. They run track together. They, I don't know, make needlepoint together, whatever it is that they do. But they're bros, right? And I'm the new kid in a condo where I don't know them at all. And they do their best just to go like, hey, cool, yeah, you're from like Kansas and stuff, cool, okay. And it's like light chit chat. And then I'm pretty much begging at this point, like, can I ski with you tomorrow? Because that was the first day. I was like, can I please just go with you? And they're like, well, I mean, we kind of had plans already. Maybe we can just meet up on the mountain. You guys ever been snow skiing? How hard is it to just meet up on a mountain? Right? Because you're at the base of one lift and they're at the top of another lift, and then it's like, well, hey, but that's a 15-minute ride. By the time you get there, they've skied down some other way. They're at a different lodge waiting on you. You don't know because that's not the plan, because plans changed while you were on the lift by yourself. You can't just meet up with somebody on a mountain. So the entire first day of the ski trip, I skied by myself. 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Didn't see a soul that I knew. I had been forgotten by my condo mates. Well, then it gets worse. The next day, I'm like, I've had enough of this. I went and found the leaders of this trip. I found a leader. It'd be like going and finding Darren Laptad and saying, Darren, can I ski with you today? Well, today is just leaders only day. Like all the leaders are going to ski together. You got to be kidding me. At this point, I had been forgotten at every step of the way. It was the worst trip I'd ever been on in my life. Sat alone on the drive home, 24 more hours, got my gear off the bus, threw it into the car, and told my parents I'm never going back to do anything with these people again. Because I'd been forgotten. Why am I telling you all this? Well, when we look at the life of Joseph, his situation is very similar. See, it seemed to deteriorate continually. We started this series seeing that he was the favored son, right? He was like, you can't play favorites in family, but he was the favorite. He was the favorite son. Then he gets sold to Potiphar's house, and he becomes a favored servant. And then today what we're going to see is that he was a favored prisoner. He was favored at each step but it was on a continual downward turn. Kind of like me. I knew a guy on the bus and he said, sorry, he forgot about me. Then it goes to the guys I don't know. Sorry, we got plans. Then it goes to the leaders. No, leaders only. You can't join us. That's what happened to Joseph in this story where we're picking it up. But what happened with Joseph was he maintained his faith in this situation, no matter what the circumstance was for him. And that's what our point is for today. The point is that God stays faithful, so we stay faithful. And if you want to take notes or something, write it on your wrist, write it in your phone. I don't know what you're doing. Sorry, I don't have anything to write on today. But the point that I want you to know is that God stays faithful to us, so we stay faithful to him. Because God stays faithful to us, that allows us to stay faithful to him. It's not the other way around. If we stay faithful to God, he stays faithful to us. It's because God remembers us. We remember him. We stay faithful to him. Okay? Now, we're going to unpack that a lot. But first, I want to just say, how did Joseph get in prison? I said he was a favored prisoner. How did he get in prison? Why was he forgotten? Well, I want to pray, and then we're going to find out, okay? So here we go. Daddy, thank you for today, and thank you for your word. Thank you for painful moments in my past that become teachable moments in my present. And I pray that we could unpack the scriptures so that there be hope today. We love you. In your name, amen. Okay, go to Genesis 39, please. 39, starting in verse 21. If you have the exact same Bible as me, it's page 41, but you don't, so it's towards the front. Genesis 39, verses 21 through 23. I'll throw it up there. It might be kind of hard to read. Lots of colors, because that's how I learned. Genesis 39, 21 through 23. When you got it, look at me awkwardly. No, see, that's just attractive. That's not awkward. Sam Nightingale. All right. It's like, all right. This is the thinker pose back there. It's like, I have your verse. Sorry. All right. That's what I do. I point out attention to people that don't want it, like my wife. she hates it when I do that. Okay. Genesis 39, 21 through 23. Let's read this. What's going to happen today is we're going to pick up the story in different pieces, and so I'm going to fill in a lot of the blanks. We're going to see what happens here. 39, 21 through 23. The Lord was with him, talking about Joseph. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in the prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. The warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. Do you hear any similarities to what we've already talked about in this dude's life? Yeah. What have we talked about already? That sounds exactly like this. When he's in Potiphar's house, right? There's all these things that are highlighted in red. Those are similarities. The Lord was with him. He granted him favor. He put Joseph in charge. God gave him success. Everywhere this guy goes, no matter the circumstance, God is with him. God is blessing him. God is doing something in this guy's life. All right? But Joseph's in prison all of a sudden. How did he get there is really what I want to fill in this gap, okay? So remember when I talked about overcoming temptation, what happened in that story? Yeah, he denied Potiphar's wife. Her advances were like, come to bed with me. He's like, no, and runs down the street in his tighty-whities, right? That's what's going on. So that was the very last thing that we saw in the story of Joseph, was that he ran out of the house and left his cloak behind. So she's got his clothing in her hands. Now what happens is she immediately cries rape. And she uses the coat as evidence that Joseph was trying to make advances against her. And she says, something like, you brought this Hebrew slave to make sport of me. And she's screaming and crying and fussing and causing all this commotion because we know, as observers of the narrative, that she was the one at fault. She was the seductress. She was the one trying to bring him down. And he did everything right. But from the outside looking in, the evidence all stacks against Joseph. Right? And so she calls everybody into the house like, look what he tried to do. You guys, we were home alone and he tried to, and like fainting and all this stuff. And so Joseph kind of gets pinned for that easily. Now, here's the deal. He gets thrown in jail and all this good stuff happens to him. But the fact that he gets thrown in jail itself is a good thing. And I want to ask you this just to illustrate it. How many of you think that Potiphar is just like raging at Joseph and just throws him into a dungeon? Like when you read the story or you hear the story, what is that the thought that comes to mind? It's okay if it is, right? Potiphar is also incredibly angry at his wife in this story. Because what does she do? She blames Potiphar for buying a slave and saying, like, she is attacking his character and saying, you brought him here to do this to me. It's like, what? That's crazy, woman. So she's just like accusing everybody she possibly can. And in this culture, if Joseph got accused of rape, he would have been executed on the spot. But the fact that he wasn't and thrown into the king's prison, which, by the way, it's still a prison, but it's not like a dungeon, okay? Very different situation for him. It shows that God's favor was still on him. He maintained his integrity through this part of the story. See, God is still with Joseph. It says that in verse 21. Even in prison, see, God is faithful, and he will not forget us. My own daughter is struggling with this right now, with girls leaving her out in kindergarten. Like, in kindergarten, that's happening. I mean, that breaks my heart as a daddy. That breaks her heart. And when you guys feel forgotten or feel left out, it breaks your heart. I get that. I'm well acquainted with that. But the good news of our scriptures is we have a God who is near to the brokenhearted. God stays faithful, so we stay faithful. Now, there's some stuff that happens in the story. Time passes, other things go on. So we're gonna jump ahead to Genesis 40, verses 5 through 8, okay? So go to Genesis 40, verses 5 through 8. Just probably the same page, I don't know. Okay, so here we go. Genesis 40, 5 through 8. I'm going to read it. It says, each of the two men. Okay, what two men are we talking about? We'll find that out in just a second. The cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. You guys know what dejected means? Like, not just like, but like, whoa, is like super sad. Okay, enough drama. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were in custody with him in his master's house, why do you look so sad today? We both had dreams, they answered, but there is no one to interpret them. Then Joseph said to them, do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams. So what we see in this story, this is kind of a filler point, but what we see is that Joseph is staying faithful to the gifts that God has given him, even while he's in prison, even while he has been forgotten of his high position in Potiphar's house. He gets thrown into prison. Even there, he is still using his gifts. The things that God has gifted him with, he is still using them. Okay, now the dream sequence in here, these two guys, this chief cupbearer and baker, they both had dreams. They're real symbolic. And at the time, pagan cultures believed that the gods would speak to you through dreams, but they would never give you the interpretation. So they had to go to scientists, and they would consult their dream books. They actually had these dream books that explained the symbolism, and then they would interpret people's dreams for them. So these guys are sad, not just because they had a nightmare, but because they had a dream, and there's like, well, we're not in the king's court anymore. We don't have anybody to figure out what, like, we feel like the gods are telling us something. And Joseph's like, interpretations belong to God. I'm no scientist. I'm a shepherd. But I can tell you what those mean. And so they tell him the dreams. He interprets them, and he nails them. Like, he gets them just right. And we're going to see that here in just a second. But I just want to illustrate this, as far as whenever we get forgotten or we get left out of something or we get we're behind or whatever, it's really easy to just kind of sit back and just kind of gripe about that situation instead of using the gifts that God has given us. If you're poetic, it's really easy, like, if you get forgotten, to just stop doing that altogether instead of using that for your creative outlet and create some great stuff, right? If you have a musical talent, it's really easy, like if you just get depressed and sad, to just go sit in your room and like stare out the window instead of grabbing your guitar or your flute or your electric triangle or whatever it is, and just keep practicing that craft. Or it's really easy for believers to when something bad happens to us, we just shut our Bible instead of consulting it, right? We stop using our gifts. We stop pursuing the things that do bring us joy whenever things go the opposite way. And for me, this happened when I was in college, my very first night on campus. All right, this is a great story. I'm like, this is one of those life-changing moments for me. Because I had my graduating class, I had about 15 people that I graduated with that all went to Texas A&M. All right, we weren't all like the best friends, but we all knew each other. We all like hung out together. We weren't like one of these massive schools. There was 400 people was in my graduating class. Okay, so I knew everybody. Not like, oh, I knew everybody. I knew everybody. I could pick them out of a crowd. But there's 15 of us that went to A&M. First night on campus, moving into my dorm. The guys across the hall are freshmen too, and they're like, hey, we're going to go out to eat. You know, my sister, she's a senior. She's going to drive us. She knows some good places. She'll take us. And I was like, okay, why not? So I get in the car with all of them, and we're driving down the road to go eat some barbecue because it's Texas, the best place in the world. All right, and I look out the window, and I see every single one of those people that I graduated with on the street corner walking to dinner together. Now, you know why that's significant? Because my phone had 0 missed calls, 0 texts, 0 emails. I wasn't even considered in that plan. I had been completely and utterly forgotten. And I'm looking out there, and instead of just rolling down my window going, "Ah!" you know, and like flipping them off and just getting mad, I just was kind of looking at it, and I kind of watched them trail off. And that's when it all kind of clicked in my mind that there's really no time to look back anymore. You know, when you get forgotten, maybe that's God saying, hey, it's time to move on in a different direction. Yeah, I didn't like get mad and never talk to them again. One of them is still one of my best friends in life. I was in his wedding. He was in mine. You know, we still talk all the time. I didn't just write him off because you didn't invite me to get chicken, you know. But it was one of those defining moments where I said, I'm not going to look back anymore. I don't have time to look back anymore and think about what if, what could have been. All I have time for now is, God, where do you want me to go? What do you want me to do? How do you want me to use my gifts? Because if I spend all my energy just trying to be re-included with high school when I'm in college, that would have just been an effort in futility. All right, so my question for you guys is, do you want to be invited to parties, or do you want to be invited to the wedding feast of the Lamb at the end of days? Do you want to be remembered this weekend, or do you want to be remembered in the kingdom? See, that's the God that we worship. That's the thing about being forgotten. We can talk about Joseph all we want, but when we talk about the gospel, think about this. Jesus on the cross, his last hours of life, criminals on either side, one is denying him, one is saying, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And in his last moments, Jesus says, today you'll be with me in paradise. Jesus is dying, being forgotten by all. And he's just a spectacle as a common criminal being executed in public. And he's remembering people. He's not forgetting about us. You are not forgotten in the gospel. You are not forgotten in the kingdom. Your friends are going to come and go because you're in middle school and 9th grade. It happens. It's like a cycle. You know, something could happen in 1st hour and be completely different by 5th hour. That's just the way it goes. But if we bank all of our life on that cycle, you are going to be exhausted and just worn out. But if you start to focus on just the forward momentum of the kingdom, that is when things start to change. That's when you don't worry about, oh man, these guys forgot to invite me to their birthday. Well, okay, you're 15. Guess what? Jesus remembers you. Let's do something with that now. And I'm coming from a place of being forgotten a lot, of being left out a lot. And it hurts. Jesus was too. His parents forgot him for 3 days when he was 12. I mean, come on. You guys can hopefully not associate that, but, you know, we've all been forgotten in some way. But for me, this college incident when everybody went out to dinner and didn't call me at all, there's no time to look back anymore. So God stays faithful. Stay faithful to him by using the gifts that God has given you. Now, the last thing I want to talk about right here is Genesis 40. It's the same chapter. Just go to 20, verse 20, verse 23. It says this, now the third day was Pharaoh's birthday. Pharaoh, that's the king of Egypt, okay? The third day was Pharaoh's birthday. And the third day was when Joseph interpreted those dreams. He says, in 3 days, this is going to happen. And now we're filling in the blank of what that this is. He gave a feast for all his officials. He lifted up the heads of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker in the presence of his officials. Okay, now what that means is that these prisoners are coming out with their heads hung in shame because they can't look at Pharaoh, all right, because they're still prisoners. And what he does is he lifts up their heads, and that's a sign of restoration. But he only does it for one of them. He lifts up the head of the cupbearer and the chief baker. He restored the cupbearer to his position so that he once again put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he impaled the chief baker, just as Joseph had said to them in his interpretation. So what it means is that he took the cupbearer, he lifted him up, and he grabbed his hand and said, come on, you're restored. And then the literal way that this says it for the other guy, the baker, says he lifted up his head and then cut it off and then stuck his body on a stick. What a bad dream, right? You never had one that bad. I promise you that. But then verse 23 is the key. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. Okay, so why did he forget him? In the interpretation, Joseph says, hey, this is going to happen. You're going to be restored. And when you have Pharaoh's ear, tell him about me. Tell him that I'm here wrongly. I don't deserve to be here. Remember me when you're restored. And he doesn't. He just completely forgets. Now, here's the thing. Think about if you're this prisoner and you see, all right, you're this prisoner, you get released from prison, you get restored to your high-ranking position, and then you watch your coworker get his head cut off and his body stuck on a stick right next to you, okay? And that's not happening to you. You're probably a little excited about that, right? Like, oh, yay, I got my job back, and I'm not that guy, right? So he's a little bit excited in this moment, right? You're just like, yeah. Think about like the end of a basketball game. You hit a buzzer beater, and you're like, yeah. You're not thinking about the concession stand worker, you know? You're just like, oh, you're so focused in the moment. He is wrapped up in this. And here's the thing. It's like he's in all of his high fives and stuff. He's like this. Watch this band guy. Look at him right there. See him? You see him in the middle? Look, he's just looking for it. Nope, nobody. Everybody around him is kind of like Pharaoh's court. All right, and the cupbearer's like, yes, he's high-fiving his buddies. He's like, I'm restored. I'm back. I'm back in Pharaoh's court. This is great. And the band guy right here is kind of like Joseph. He's like, hey, no, I got you there. No, you don't see him? Here, I'll point him out. He's right here. This guy. That guy. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna turn that one off because he gets like, oh, it's happened to me so many times. The thing is, it's kind of like you helped me, but you didn't really help me. Okay? Now, this is just an illustration. I love the band. I love cheerleaders. I love all of that. But when you're an athlete and you win, who are you reaching for? Your teammates, right? When you win state, you don't go, where's that fourth chair triangle player? You know, and go get him. I have a thing about triangles today. Just I don't know. Maybe I'm hungry. It's like a dinner bell. But that's not what's happening, right? The ones that are in the crowd, like the band and cheer and all that, like you guys, you're getting the crowd pumped up and you're getting them involved, and that is the role. But the team itself that are on the floor, they're like hugging each other and high-fiving each other. And occasionally they're looking for mom or dad or whatever, or their girlfriend, like, hey, like you didn't play, you know, or whatever. That was my history. But But that's the thing is there's like this difference there. And Joseph, if you think about it, he really didn't do anything in this situation. He interpreted a dream. And he said, in 3 days, you're going to be restored. He didn't do anything to make that happen. He just kind of told him it happened. Okay? So it's kind of like, okay, well, Joseph helped him, but he didn't really help him. So it's easy to think of why he got forgotten. Okay? When I played basketball in high school, I never had a game-winning shot, okay? But if I did, I would be high-fiving and hugging my teammates. I wouldn't turn around and go, Obo, yeah, you hit that note. You know, I wouldn't do that. I love the band. You guys are so cool. I love you guys a ton. But I wouldn't do that as a player. And band guys, too, like the opposite is true. You know, you'd be like, I'm going to just squeal on this and, you know, and do your thing. It's like, I did that. I made that shot. My sound waves You know, it's a dumb example. I got to get off of that one, okay? But here's another one. Here's another way to think. Yeah, here's another way to think about it. Think about, like, if you're in the States and you are lost, you can stop at a QT and just say, "Where's the BOK Center?" And they'll just kind of tell you, like, "All right, turn right, and you go about 3 miles and you're there." And then you go, "Thank you," and you can leave, right? If you go to another country and you go, "Where is Los BOK Center?" then they're going to tell you, and then they're going to stick out their hand because they want you to pay them. It's like, well, you helped me, but you didn't really help me. Like, I'm in the area, but you didn't drive me there. You know, like, they want a tip for everything. There's always want a tip, so you never make eye contact or whatever. But that's what's happening with Joseph, is he got forgotten. He did something, but he didn't really do something. And so it was really easy for him to get forgotten. And us, man, it's real easy for us to get forgotten sometimes. And when we do, it hurts. It really hurts. Kinsley is turning 6 on Tuesday. What? 6-year-old. That's crazy. It's just still like, what? I have a 6-year-old. She's turning 6. And we're having her birthday party next weekend, right? And we're just waiting for people to RSVP from her class. That's the longest wait. It's like, how is it possible that you're being left out of your own party? That kind of stuff hurts, doesn't it? Think back, even this week, think back to the times you've been forgotten. Recall that. And then think about the good news of the gospel. Because, man, in the kingdom, you are not forgotten. God is here. God is with us. God is within you. God connects us. And those of you that I was praying for by name last night to show up today, and you did, that is God saying, you are not forgotten. And here's the thing. If you do feel forgotten or left out in this ministry, I apologize. I'm doing everything I can to make sure that doesn't happen, but there's a lot of you, and little cracks people can just slide right through, and I won't even notice. So if you're here because I prayed for you to be here, for this reason, I want to say I'm sorry that you feel forgotten by me. Because that's pathetic. And I need to do a lot better. I know how it feels. I know where you're at. I know where all of us have been at one time or another. Good thing is we have Joseph that we can look at. We have Jesus we can look at. We got lots of people we can look at. All of us at one time or another have been forgotten or left out. It hurts, but really it's all a matter of perspective. See, maybe not getting invited to a party means you're not going to be around people that are drinking and influencing you to make stupid choices. Maybe. Maybe getting left out of a group text is the very thing that God wants to use to get you back into his text for the first time or the first time in a long time. Maybe. It's all a matter of perspective. See, Joseph's story could have been a lot worse. God is up to something with him. And we're only halfway through it. But there's just something going on with Joseph, and I wonder what it is. You know, he could have been left for dead, like we saw that first week. His brothers beat him up, threw him in a well, and they could have just left him for dead. But he got rescued and sold into slavery at just the right moment. He could have been a regular slave, you know, just kind of thrown into the mix of Egyptian culture. But no, he got bought by the captain of the guard. And he was a high-ranking official's favored slave. And he could have been executed on the spot for Potiphar's wife's accusations against him. But he wasn't. He was put in the king's prison. Prison, nonetheless, but the royal prison. And then God showed him favor while he was in that prison. I mean, what is God up to? But what about you? If you've been forgotten or you feel like nobody noticed you, what is God getting ready to do? See, Joseph was abandoned like we've all felt at some point. Joseph was tempted like we've all felt at some point. And Joseph was forgotten like we've all been at some point. But there's more to his story, and there's more to your story as well. I just wonder, what story is God writing in your life? What's next for you?